For 17 years, our life was what I thought was perfect. A beautiful house, two amazing kids, and a wife I loved more than life itself. But that perfect picture shattered 5 years ago when she cheated on me with her ex from college. I divorced her. I moved on. I even found love again. But life has a twisted sense of humor. Because today I walked into my new office as the new boss, and there they were. My ex-wife and the man she left me for are now my employees. 17 years is a long time. It's long enough to build a history, a family, and what I thought was an unbreakable trust. My wife Sarah and I were that couple, the one everyone else looked up to. We met in our early 20s, full of dreams, and we actually made them happen. We bought a house in a quiet suburb, planted a garden, and filled our home with the laughter of our son and daughter. I had a great career in corporate strategy, and she'd landed a stable marketing job. Our life wasn't flashy, but it was full. We had our little traditions: Sunday morning pancakes, Friday night movie marathons with the kids, our annual trip to the coast. I can't count the number of times I looked at her across the dinner table and just felt lucky. I wasn't just in love with her. I was in love with the life we built. The idea of betrayal wasn't even in the same universe as my reality. She was my partner, my teammate. When I was stressing about work, she talked me off the ledge. When the kids were sick, we'd trade off late-night duty. We were a team. And that's the part that's so hard to square now. The person I leaned on, my rock, was secretly drilling a hole in the bottom of our boat. For years, I was living in a beautiful illusion, and I was the only one who didn't have a clue. The way I found out wasn't dramatic, not like you see in the movies. There was no private eye, no lipstick on my collar. It was quieter, and honestly, a lot more painful. It was a Tuesday night. Sarah had fallen asleep on the couch, and her phone, which was usually attached to her hand, was sitting on the coffee table. It buzzed, lighting up the dark room. A message preview popped up from a name I didn't know, Mark. The message was short, but it was enough to suck all the air out of my lungs. Can't stop thinking about last weekend. My heart started hammering in my chest. I felt like I was floating outside my own body. Mark, the name rang a bell, and then it hit me. Mark was her college ex, the one she always wrote off as a fun but immature phase. I picked up her phone. It was unlocked. My hands were shaking as I opened the message thread. It was all there, months of it. Explicit texts, plans for secret meetups, and conversations about me. They talked about my work schedule, about when the kids would be at their grandparents', about the close calls where I almost caught them. The worst part wasn't even the physical stuff. It was the emotional gut punch. Reading her complain about me to him, seeing her use the same pet names for him that she used for me. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I was just frozen by this cold, heavy dread. They say discovering an affair can feel like actual trauma, and they're right. My whole body felt like it was shutting down. I walked upstairs, sat on the edge of our bed, and just waited for her to wake up. When she finally stumbled into the room, looking confused, I just held up the phone. All the color drained from her face. She didn't even try to deny it. Her silence was the loudest confession I've ever heard. I spent the next few days in a total fog. I know you're not supposed to make any huge life decisions right after something like that, but I knew with every fiber of my being that this was over. The trust wasn't just broken, it was gone. Burned to ashes. Every memory we ever made was now tainted. Every "I love you" she ever said felt like a lie. The divorce was surprisingly fast. She didn't fight me on anything. Not the house, not the kids. I think she was just drowning in guilt, and I was too emotionally fried to do anything but get away. She moved out, and I was left standing in the wreckage of our life, trying to figure out how to tell our kids that our family wasn't going to be the same anymore. That first year was the hardest. It was a blur of therapy, sleepless nights, and feeling this deep sense of shame, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. I learned there's a name for it: betrayal trauma. It's a wound that goes deep. I threw all my energy into two things: my kids and my career. I made sure their lives stayed as normal as possible, and at work, I became a machine. I took on the hardest projects, worked the longest hours, and started climbing the ladder faster than I ever thought I could. It wasn't about the money. It was about clawing back my self-worth. Over the next 5 years, I slowly put my life back together. I even found new love with an amazing woman who values honesty as much as I do. My kids were happy. I was happy, genuinely happy. I'd heard through the grapevine that Sarah and Mark had moved in together right after the divorce and were both working at some mid-level marketing firm. I had put them in my rearview mirror. I never thought our paths would cross again, let alone explode like this. My company is big on acquisitions, so when the news broke that we were buying a smaller marketing firm to fold into our division, I was chosen to lead the whole thing. It was a huge vote of confidence from the higher-ups, and I was genuinely excited. I spent weeks going over financials and personnel files, but the names were just names. Data on a spreadsheet. The day of the official takeover came. I drove to the new office, a slick building downtown, feeling proud. This was it. This was the payoff for 5 years of grinding. I was the new head of the division, the boss. I walked through the glass doors with the outgoing CEO, who was there to do the introductions. He led me through an open-plan office, and that's when I saw them. It was a scene so unbelievable it felt fake. There, in a row of cubicles, sitting maybe 10 feet apart, were Sarah and Mark. Everything went into slow motion. I literally felt the blood drain from my face. Mark saw me first. His eyes went wide, and he looked like he'd just seen a ghost. He nudged Sarah. She looked up, and her jaw just dropped. The office chatter slowly died down as everyone else noticed their shocked faces and followed their eyes, right to me. In that single moment, the entire power dynamic of the last 5 years didn't just shift. It was a full-on earthquake. The outgoing CEO, completely clueless, clapped me on the shoulder. "Everyone," he announced, "I'd like to introduce your new boss." I locked eyes with Sarah. The woman who blew up my world was now staring back at me with pure terror. I somehow got through the speech I'd prepared, talking about synergy, the future, all that corporate stuff. It was the most surreal 10 minutes of my entire life. My first instinct? Pure, unfiltered rage. I wanted to fire them right there on the spot. But I took a deep breath. I had worked too hard to get here, and I wasn't going to let them make me lose my cool. This wasn't going to be about revenge. It was going to be about professionalism. The very next day, I scheduled a meeting with HR. I laid out the facts, calmly and objectively. To ensure total impartiality, I told them, I need to disclose a prior personal relationship with 2 employees, my ex-wife and the man she had an affair with. They were stunned. This situation isn't exactly in the company handbook, but they agreed to document the conflict of interest and oversee my management of them to make sure everything was completely by the book. I treated them with polite, professional distance. In meetings, they were just 2 more employees. Their personal history was irrelevant to me. Their professional performance, however, was now under a microscope. And it didn't take long for the problems to surface. They had gotten comfortable, maybe even lazy, at their old company. Their work was sloppy, they missed deadlines, and their numbers were some of the worst in the department. Under the old management, they were flying under the radar. But not anymore. I didn't have to invent a reason to act. They gave me one. After 2 months of documented subpar work and official warnings, I placed them both on a performance improvement plan, or PIP, with HR co-signing every single step. A PIP isn't just a slap on the wrist. It's a formal process with clear, strict targets and a 90-day timeline to meet them. Mark fell apart. He couldn't handle the pressure or the daily humiliation of reporting to me. He quit within a month. Sarah tried to stick it out, but she just couldn't meet the standards. At the end of the 90 days, she was still failing. My last official act as her boss was to sign her termination papers. There was no big dramatic confrontation. It was quiet, bureaucratic, and perfectly professional. You know how they say living well is the best revenge? I spent a long time believing that. I rebuilt my life, found happiness, and became successful on my own terms. But fate handed me a different kind of closure. It wasn't about making them hurt. I didn't have to. All I had to do was hold them to the same standard as everyone else, and they simply couldn't cut it. They engineered their own downfall, first in my personal life and then, 5 years later, in their professional lives. This story sounds like it's straight out of a movie, I know. But whether you believe every last detail or not, let me tell you, the feeling of seeing karma finally balance the books is very, very real. They may have destroyed my past, but I refuse to let them be part of my future. I just did my job and justice handled the rest. So, what would you have done? Would you have gone for immediate revenge or played the long game like I did? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure you subscribe because I've got more to tell.